Hey, Bill Sinyard here. What difference could reading good books possibly have in your life and the life of your family, your children, particularly teens and tweens? Well, you'd be surprised. The answer is a lot. Welcome to God's Love for the Unlovable and Gospel Rants series, a new format, Vagabond Diaries. We want this to be fun, informative, life-changing, relevant. We want it to stimulate lots of dialogue within the body of Christ. We want to help parents, single parents, and other parents and caregivers and children's workers. We want to help all of those folks. Listen, it's a rant, so we're going to be doing some things interesting, and we might be taking some a different lens to see biblical scripture correctly, differently. So I hope this is a special treat for you. I'm in the process of preparing a new workshop for Christian parents called Parent Tips from Middle Earth. Yeah, so I'm unpacking the young readers' books of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien. I mean, not word for word, but their philosophy of writing back in the World War II era, and in particular, try to find things that could help parents today with our teens and tweens today and younger. You may be surprised just how insightful they were. I've spoken and written about it often in a number of venues, but now I'm shaping this online course. It'll be 6 or 7 lessons. So I want feedback from you. Bill at gospel-app.com. We'll get into the neuroscience of reading and reading good books. We'll get into attachment theory, but for the most part, it's just unadulterated gospel through the lenses of these two great authors. See, I am convinced if they were here today in your living room, particularly you who are parents today, and by the way, if you're not parents, get this to parents quickly, Christian parents. If they were here today, they would be pleading with you to get your kids to read more good books. But what are good books? Well, I'm going to tell you. So for the next 3 gospel rants, we will look at the first 3 of the 7 lessons that I've written, parent tips from Middle Earth. This rant is all about shaping a teenage gospel. Enjoy. Welcome to God's Love for the Unlovable and Gospel Rant. So welcome to Parent Tips from Middle Earth. This is different than a lot of parenting programs you've been to. Here's a quote from Tolkien. The realm of fairy story is wide and deep and high and filled with many things. All manners of beasts and birds are found there, shoreless seas and stars uncounted, beauty that is an enchantment and an ever-present peril, both joy and sorrow as sharp as swords. But to the point, here's George Johnson, a secular author. Whenever you read a book, the experience causes physical changes in your brain. Yeah? Well, this first talk is going to be casting a teenage gospel. How can we reach our teenagers better with the love of God for the unlovable? Jerry Seinfeld said having a teenager is like having a blender without a lid. But today it's a blender without a lid with a smartphone. Recent data from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry notes that teens are spending up to 9 hours a day on social media and only 5 minutes reading. We're going to push against that a lot. So parents of adolescents, friends, and youth ministers, I'm writing Christian young readers' quest books now. That's a narrow subcategory under the larger, just blossoming fantasy category of books. You know, in the past, I've written on very serious adult topics such as exegesis, evangelism, attachment theory, parenting, addiction, theology, mental health. Thousands of hurting Christians have gone through my online 3-hour journey, The Forgiving Path. I've written over a dozen Bible studies, made scholarly presentations to Society of Biblical Literature, and have produced Right Now media programs. But now I'm an author of an award-winning quest book series for 9 to 16-year-olds. Go figure. Why am I doing it? To change the world. Of course, one teen at a time. I think excellent Christian quest tales, and I'll define all that, are wildly positive for the developing brains of 9 to 16-year-olds and are a, unfortunately, unused, very effective way to help them learn about the love of God for the unlovable. And as an added bonus, It should make them less anxious, more secure, and more hopeful, and even more respectful to those in authority. Yeah? If you're a Christian parent of an adolescent, don't just wave your hands dismissively at this. Your child is being bombarded by a myriad of anxiety creators, other stories that no other generation has had to deal with in our lifetime. They need something more than a weekly youth group where they have classes on the Bible. That's good. But and remember, Jesus taught by telling stories. And I think that would be a good guide for us. But he told kingdom oriented ones, not just stories for story's sake. Your teen's brain is being filled with a bunch of competing stories, some actually destructive to their well being and identity. Per the CDC, a shocking 42% of adolescents are experiencing sadness and hopelessness, and that's up 50% from 2011. It's a mental health crisis out there for our most vulnerable demographic, adolescents. 46% of adolescents ages 13 to 17 said social media makes them feel worse about their body image. So I think it's time to shift our strategy for evangelizing and discipling and teaching our adolescents. Just to shift, right? C.S. Lewis is reported to have said that if he had to do it all over again, he would write more young readers' quest books like Chronicles of Narnia. He seemed to be aware of their power for the lives of children and adults. His dear friend J.R.R. Tolkien, who most give credit as the creator of the modern fantasy genre, though I think he would hardly recognize most fantasy today, he believed that God created our brains to actually thrive and expand when we're immersed in a specific type of quest tale, which he referred to as fairy tales. That's what this series is about. What difference does it make and how can it help our children? And as you're going to see, not all books in the modern category of fantasy would impress either Lewis or Tolkien. One of the best known fantasy writers in the world today, Brandon Sanderson, said in a recent interview that good fantasy must include three things done really well. There's world building, we'll talk about that, story plotting, and character development. Yeah? Now, I'm sure Tolkien and Lewis would agree, but they would also add to that list that good fantasies, the ones we're talking about, reflect the nature of God and the gospel. And that's a priority in good Tolkien-esque and Lewis-esque fantasies. That's what truly gives Tolkien-esque fantasies their unique narrative spiritual framework, their historic power to change young lives in particular. I totally agree with that. Such stories resonate with the adolescent brain because God made them. And we know now from neuroscience that it resonates more than we thought. Did you know that both C.S. Lewis and Tolkien wrote their Good Quest stories in part to bring hope as well as emotional and spiritual healing to the shredded teens of post World War II Britain? Even though they don't mention God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit or mention the cross or the gospel, they evangelized an entire generation. I think it's time to pick up that cross. See, I think they were onto something. Research has shown that being swept up into a really good positive story, even a secular one, accomplishes something remarkably similar in the brain of a young teen as that which occurs in the brain of a distressed infant being lovingly held in his or her mother's arms. Now, at first blush, that may seem like an over the top exaggeration, but science seems to agree. The deeper a reader is immersed in an excellent story, the more areas of his or her brain are positively activated. That favorable neural hit could last for days. Now, wouldn't that be a good thing for our teens? Here's a quote from Gregory Burns. Stories shape our lives and in some cases help define a person, says neuroscientist Gregory Burns. The neural changes that we found associated with physical sensation and movement systems suggest that reading a novel can transport you into the body of the protagonist. We already knew that good stories can put you in someone else's shoes in a figurative sense. Now we're seeing that something may also be happening biologically. Being immersed in good story rewires our brains, and particularly for teenagers. It creates new positive neural networks. It enhances communication between the two brain's hemispheres. It equips your teen to process information more efficiently and can reduce their stress levels by as much as 68%, says one researcher. In as little as 6 minutes of being immersed in a book, your heart rate slows, your blood pressure lowers, and your muscles begin to relax. To enjoy the long term benefits of reading, research suggests that 30 minutes of daily reading dramatically impacts the physical symptoms of stress. Our kids are stressed, you probably know that. Reading such good books is critical for the emotional, relational identity, and spiritual well being of our teens and tweens. Their vulnerable brain, particularly during early adolescence, right? That ages 9 to about 16. Then, if you add on top of that the gospel of Jesus' love for the unlovable, the unloved, and the unlovely, as Lewis and Tolkien discovered, something special is going to happen. And to accomplish that, you're going to look at some things. The protagonist of the story and his or her quest really needs to reflect the innate heart of Jesus. The end of the book should manifest a God who works all things, including conflicts, together for good. Jesus, remember, he is described as the Word, the story that alone can rescue shredded, insecure, anxious, unlovable people in this broken world. And that's all of us if we were just a little bit honest. The Chronicles of Narnia is a great way for parents and their children to read not only good books together, but then discuss biblical elements at the same time. That's what I'm suggesting. Over 100 million people have read Chronicles of Narnia, and I would say that many of them came to Christ. To be clear, I am suggesting strongly that good stories are a very powerful way to evangelize, to heal, to disciple our teens and tweens. And they should be in our tool chest, and we should know how to use them well. And you're going to notice dramatic changes very quickly, I suspect. Now, I'm not saying that any story, and particularly any generic modern fantasy, is going to accomplish those goals. Tolkien got it. He understood that not all fantasy books are the same. While some offer positive benefits, other might actually increase anxiety in the reader. We'll be talking about that. I'm going to unpack that. But if, as is the case in many so-called fantasy books today, if the book portrays no clarity between good and evil, if the protagonist is a morally ambiguous character, or if the story does not end with good conquering evil, the reader's not going to experience the powerful emotional benefit. And the gospel is going to be confused, right? It's going to only increase the reader's experience of anxiety and insecurities. Doesn't that make sense? Tolkien's fairy tales, which I refer to as quest tales, integrate the echo of the gospel into their story plotting and character development and world building. Such stories, per Tolkien, are the most powerful, life enhancing form of storytelling due to their unsurpassed ability to reawaken a sense of wonder at the simple or ordinary things around us, and for their ability to empower anxious and insecure readers to escape from the ugliness of the troubling and foreboding world around them. Such good stories are special and powerful. According to Tolkien, creators of good tales that we've been talking about, they're exercising, listen, their high God given gift of subcreation. The telling and reading of such excellent stories cause us to experience our existential purposes. We're created by God to be people of good stories, hearing, creating, and telling. Here's a quote from Tolkien, quote, "It is the mark of a good fairy story of the higher or more complete kind that however wild its events, however fantastic or terrible the adventure, it can give to child or man that hears it when the turn comes, a catch of the breath, a beat and lifting of the heart, near to, or indeed accompanied by, tears, as keen as that given by any form of literary art, and having a peculiar quality. Fantasy, in this sense, is, I think, not a lower but a higher form of art. Indeed, the most nearly pure form, and so when achieved, the most potent." Close quote. I believe that if Tolkien were here and sitting with a bunch of young parents of teens, Christian parents, he would be pleading with them to get their children to read more good books, more good gospel immersed quest tales, fantasy tales, fairy tales, and lots of them, and fast. So, look, in summary, God designed us and our brains to respond positively or negatively to story. They can cause us to feel more hopeful, less anxious, more secure, even when the world around us is blowing up. And for our vulnerable adolescents, right, 9 to 16, this is amazing news. The question remains, what is a good quest story? And just for fun, I'm closing this talk with an excerpt from my Tale of the Unlikely Prince. You can see and you can hear the shadows of a gospel presentation of Jesus in it. Yeah. A little backdrop. Young, insecure adolescent Prince Yeled, teenager, is sent on a quest. No, a great quest. No, the greatest quest in the history of quest to try to prove his worth and value to the king and, by the way, his mirror. He will need to learn that not all quests are alike, and this king is definitely not what he appears. Two of the characters in this clip: Nomos, the great king's royal vizier and mentor and trainer of the prince heir Yeled, and the royal counselor Numai, who accompanies Yeled on his quest. We'll start off with Nomos. Tell me, lad, how's the quest? Did you slay the nasty dragon? Nomos asked, bringing up the elephant in the room. Uh, Nomos, with all due respect, opined Yeled, I've failed badly. I've brought disgrace to myself and shame to my king. I'm not worthy to be called his son. Nomos paused for a while, not saying anything, but compassionately gazing into the young lad's eyes. And then he spoke. Oh, you foolish lad, your boom's out the window, meaning you're not making any sense. Ah, lad, dinna ya hear from me? I dinna ask about those dragons. I could care less about those insignificant reptiles. I asked you if you slayed the dragon. That was your quest, you see. He almost paused and rubbed his full beard thoughtfully. What he said next was very unexpected. Boy, you dinna hear the question right again? Will you tell me about your dragon? Those other beasties come and go. I'm talking about the real dragon. The royal steward saw this as her cue and invited the confused Yella to sit down on a nearby log. My prince, the steward gently added, you are, whether you know it or not, even though you never asked for it, you are a child of your father and mother. Inside your head is a hungry dragon voraciously consuming almost every compliment, every statement of love, and every so-beed honor. The beast quickly extinguishes any feelings of you being enough. Your dragon has been there for as long as you can remember and beyond, preventing you from feeling like the son any father would be proud of. So the rest of your brain just kept working on feeding your beast. It's not all your fault, and so your quest was ultimately designed for you to face that dragon, your dragon. I don't understand, exclaimed Yellet. How can I slay a dragon I can't see? How can I slay a dragon that's in me, that is me? Ah, you can't, said Nomos, interrupting as he placed one of his stubby fingers along the side of his nose to suggest at last the great secret was out. Nomos took out his long pipe. He had long given up smoking. It's bad for your health, you know, but it calmed him to put the unlit pipe in his mouth. Then Nomos continued his thought. That's the whole point, the irony of it all. You can't. You did all you could do, and it wasn't enough to even prick that dragon in you. Now you have two paths left. You can keep feeding your inner dragon for the rest of your life, and good luck with that. You'll never feel good enough. You'll never feel your father is proud of you enough. Or you can finally admit you can't do it and run helplessly into the arms of your king. There's real healing power there and there alone. Do what your parents wouldn't do, couldn't do. The choice is yours, lad. Irony again. You left the presence of the king to find putrid substitute for the presence of the king. But the further you went away, the worse you felt. Simply put, the king knew you would fail, humanly speaking. It was the goal of the quest, or at least the first level of the quest. Sometimes the shaming is the positive thing. In fact, redemptive shaming is a very good thing, so I hear. He said the last part with a wink and a grin and a high jump where he clicked his heels. Even a failure in the careful hands of a wise king can lead to an end far greater than all the successes of all time rolled into a single humongous ball. If in your failure ye would come to see that ye are in greater need than ye have ever before imagined, it's all good. All ye ever needed was need, and ye didn't have that until now. And if the failure brings you into his arms, what say ya? Nomos gave Yellett a toothy grin. He had practiced that line, and his delivery was flawless. So, what do you think? You hear the gospel in all of that, right? The character development, the appreciation of authority, the sympathy, empathy. The point is, so will your child, and they will be able to speak it to others. Here's Tolkien again, quote, "The consolation of fairy stories, the joy of the happy ending, or more correctly, of the good catastrophe, the sudden joyous turn, for there is no true end to any fairy tale. This joy, which is one of the things which fairy stories can produce supremely well, is not essentially escapist nor fugitive. In its fairy tale or otherworld setting, it is a sudden and miraculous grace, never to be counted on to recur. It does not deny the existence of the discatastrophe of sorrow and failure. The possibility of these is necessary to the joy of deliverance. It denies, in the face of much evidence, if you will, universal final defeat. And insofar is evangelium. You heard that, right? Evangelism, giving a fleeting glimpse of joy, joy beyond the walls of the world, poignant as grief. Yeah? You heard the gospel, right? So, my ultimate hope is that our teens will reshape how the gospel is being told to their friends, how they're hearing it themselves. Have you heard that there is a God who cares for an overlooked race of people like Gandalf did for the hobbits, or who has empathy and compassion for war traumatized teens like the lion and the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? And even though they mess up, they still become kings and queens. That's good news for insecure teens, and it reflects the gospel. All right, in the next talk, we're going to look at the nature of adolescent neurology, why good stories work in our teen brains. I think you'll enjoy that. So here's some dialogue starters I thought could help. Maybe parents, if you get together with other parents, or even talk to your teens and tweens if you can. First of all, push back. Second, what did you learn about Tolkien and Lewis and their insights they have about your children and parenting as well? Third, how can you share the gospel of Jesus better after hearing this rant? Hey, listen, if you like this gospel rant, please like and subscribe and forward it. The link to a friend. Check out my award-winning fantasy books, Kingdom Quest trilogy. First is Tale of the Unlikely Prince. The second is The Storyteller's Tale. Third is The Garden Tale. A new book is on the way, The Tale of the Magician Orphan. Look, these are award-winning, and each has been favorably compared to Chronicles of Narnia. Check them out and get them for your teens and tweens. Younger teens. They're available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If you want more information, check out my author page, drbillsinyard, one word, .com. Take heart, child of God.